The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is the second day of this second back-to-back session here in spring of Mountain Gate in 2021. And I would like to share with you again more of Kalu Rinpoche's teachings on the nature of mind, which is, of course, what our practice is about. It is exploring the nature of mind. This mind, which we assume is here, that's a big mistake. It is not. It's not located in our brain. And even medical science has realized that there are many places in our body where there are neurological cells perceiving and interacting with each other. The gut speaking to the brain and vice versa, and so on and so forth. Who are we really? What are we really? We're sort of taught that we're a person with specific qualities based on what we understood growing up and who impacted us, whether positively or negatively. We gain from that ideas about who we are. But is that who we are? And what happens to those sets of ideas when we die? And yet, there are people who remember past lives. And if you watch the Tibetan Book of the Dead videos, you can see examples, at least one very specific example in which a young monk, Tibetan monk, was killed by the Chinese, and he was, it seems, reborn as a child in a different village. And when he was 3 years old, something like that, he told his parents he wanted to go home. And of course, he was home in terms of this life. And he described very specifically where this home was. It was in another village, and his parents took him there. And he went to the house of his aunt and aptly described before they got there everything that was in the house. He and his aunt had a wonderful reunion. And it was interesting that this child was born with some birthmarks. I think they were on his chest. And the birthmarks actually were exactly where, if you want to call it his previous incarnation, was shot. It's kind of hard not to think that he was really in his next life. And a psychiatrist, Dr. Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia, did years, decades of research into cultures where there's not any attempt to discourage memories of past lives. He found that, I think it was oddly enough, the Burmese and Eskimos, and I think there was a third culture that he studied, and I found similar circumstances where people were able to remember exactly, in detail, former lives in ways that could be corroborated. So that may seem to put the lie to the fact that this body is this life and that's it. Is it? Who are we? What are we? We come into this world if we're sensitive. And those of you listening to this teisho, I'm sure, are sensitive. with a sense that there is something vital to return to experiencing or living or being aware of. It's really hard to put it into words, because actually there are no words that will express it accurately. Some sense that we are almost like out on a limb, away from the very base of being. We need to return to that base of being and experience the purity, the openness, and all the other qualities of our true nature. Of course, none of which can be described. But let me share again today this poem. It's not exactly a poem, but this writing by the third Karmapa, a Tibetan master, on the nature of mind. All phenomena are projections of the mind. All phenomena. The computer, the other people in the Zendo itself, you who are listening, are projections of the mind. Now, what is this mind that is so phenomenal that it creates all of these things? All phenomena are projections of the mind. Mind is not a mind. The mind is empty in essence. Although empty, everything constantly arises in it. Through the deepest examination of the mind, may we find its innermost root. That is exactly what we are doing now. That's exactly why we come to Sesshin. That's exactly why we sit Zazen, because we are compelled inwardly somehow to get to the root of this beingness, find out who we really are, and be able to live it fully. Life is full of challenge. Life is full of suffering, really. But there's another way to see it. There's another way to experience it. And there is some sense, perhaps, in you that this is a possibility for yourself. As we do practice, particularly as we do practice for a long, long time, we begin to shift and change. We begin to subtly jettison attachments, and attachments can be quite subtle. And as we subtly jettison these attachments, increasingly so, we become more free. We become more able to meet life's challenges, interact with people in more helpful, compassionate ways. It's a life's long project, and it is joyful. Just think, considering the level of suffering you're experiencing now or in the recent past, consider becoming truly free of it without denying it, and what that freedom would taste like. And that is possible through the Zazen, if we give ourselves truly, completely. We human beings are drawn to attachment to many things: position, people, things. And each one of these is a potential source of suffering. Because when things that we want disappear, people that we know die, people we care about die, people we care about reject us. These are painful experiences. And yet there's something deep within us that can truly be free in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the suffering. And there is no way to describe it. But when we go deeply enough in our Zazen, it becomes possible. All phenomena are projections of the mind. Mind is not a mind. The mind is empty in essence. Although empty, everything constantly arises in it. Through the deepest examination of the mind, may we find its innermost root. And as we extend the out-breath with the openness to possibility, with the subtle wordless questioning that arises from koan work, we are gradually letting go of where we are inhibited from recognizing that fundamental being that we are. And persistence is essential, as is faith, because it's not like going to school where we have pretty clear feedback on whether we're doing it right or not. We have no clues for a long time. Our teacher can give us encouraging words. Our teacher can indicate where there's we're heading down a blind alley. Our teacher can say things that may bring us up short in an effort to help us see, to help us go deeper. So Kalu Rinpoche spoke about the qualities of mind. The first one of which he mentioned was openness. Mind is what thinks I am, I want, I don't want. It is the thinker, the observer, the subject of all experiences. I am the mind. From one point of view, this mind does exist, since I am and I have a capacity for actions. If I want to see, I can look. If I want to hear, I can listen. If I decide to do something with my hands, I can command my body, and so on. In this sense, the mind and its faculties seem to exist. And yet, where is this mind? Show me some evidence that it exists. And you can't just point to your body, because that's going to dissolve one day. And not only is it going to dissolve, but it's not even yours. More of the cells that make up this body are a support system of protozoa, bacteria, and so on. So where does this mind come from? How can we find it? And is it an it? However exhaustive our investigations, we will never be able to find any formal characteristic of mind. It has neither dimension, form, color, nor any tangible quality. It is in this sense that it is called open, because it is essentially indeterminate, unqualifiable, beyond concept, and thus comparable to space. And so if it is beyond concept, there's no way we can think our way to knowing it, to finding it, to experiencing it. And yet we don't have to find it, it's here now. We can't step out of it, there's no way. And then he also shares that another aspect of mind is what he terms clarity. If the mind is indeed essentially open, in the sense explained above, it is not only open or void, because if it were, It would be inert. It would not experience or know anything, neither sensations, nor joy, nor suffering. Mind is not only open, it possesses a second essential quality, which is its capacity for experiences and for cognition. This dynamic quality is called clarity. It is both the lucidity of mind's intelligence and the luminosity of its experiences. And now I'd like to share some of the poetry of Rumi. Rumi, the Sufi mystic, who was in Central Asia and ended up in Turkey. His tomb is in Konya. I have been there, I have seen it, along with the tombs of his sons. It's in a particularly small little building. And he is still famous, and his followers still perform what they know in the West as whirling to the sound of a nose flute called a ney. They begin turning. These are why they're called the whirling dervishes. And they turn and they turn and they turn and they turn, and they're focused so profoundly. It's a form of zazen. And through this, they come to awareness of what they call God, which is not outside us. And that also is recognized. And so the only way that it can be spoken of really is through poetry. And Rumi was excellent in that line. There are other Sufi poets. Hafiz is one. He also was amazing in his ability to express the ineffable and point to this mind, if we want to call it that. This is from the book Rumi, In the Arms of the Beloved, translated by Jonathan Starr, who lives in Princeton, New Jersey, by the way. Those of you who also live in Princeton, New Jersey, who are near Princeton, New Jersey, who are listening to this, teisho. And I'd like to share in particular two poems. One is called Only Through This. Abandon this world that you may become king of all worlds. Throw away your handful of sugar that you may become a sugar field. Leap like a flame through the sky, scatter the dark spirits and become the pillar of heaven. When Noah sails upon the flooding waters, you will be his ark. When the prophet ascends to heaven, you will be his ladder. When Jesus walks among the weary souls, you will be his healing breath. When Moses goes forth as a shepherd, you will be his staff. A divine fire blazes within you. Don't jump back like a coward. Cook in that fire. Bake like bread. Soon you'll be the prize of every table, the life-giving food of every meal. Walk patiently through this troubled world and you'll find a great treasure. Even though your house is small, look within it. You will find the secrets of the unseen world. I asked, why have I received only this? A voice replied, only this will lead you to that with a capital T. No more words from my mouth. I didn't come here to wag my chin. I came here to chew on sugarcane. It's a tremendous amount of metaphor in this. Let me share it once more. Abandon this world. As we deepen our practice, searching more and more completely for this unnameable, really, we necessarily abandon this world temporarily. And in fact, we abandon what we think is this world. It's called samadhi in Japanese, and it's an essential prerequisite to coming to awakening, to let everything go, at least briefly. We have to disappear in order to open to what is truly real with a capital R. And he speaks of it here. Abandon this world that you may become the king of all worlds. Throw away your handful of sugar that you may become a sugar field. Leap like a flame through the sky, scatter the dark spirits in it, become the pillar of heaven. When Noah sails upon the flooding waters, you will be his ark. When the prophet ascends to heaven, you will be his ladder. When Jesus walks along among the weary souls, you will be his healing breath. When Moses goes forth as a shepherd, you will be his staff. A divine fire blazes within you. That brings you to the cushion. Honor it. Die into it. Don't jump back like a coward. Cook in that fire. Bake like bread. Soon you'll be the prize of every table, the life-giving food of every soul. Walk patiently through this troubled world, and you'll find a great treasure. Even though your house is small, look within it. You will find the secrets of the unseen world. I asked, why have I received only this? And a voice replied, only this will lead you to that, capital T. No more words from my mouth. I didn't come here to wag my chin. I came here to chew on sugarcane. Much metaphor in that poem. And metaphor is the only way that certain things can be expressed because there are no words, really. There's no vocabulary that can express reality, the truth, your true nature, or as the Sufis call it, God or Allah. It's all the same at the base. And all the religions seek to open to that profound beingness. And here's another. This is called the eternal play. At dawn, the moon appeared in the sky. It floated down and looked at me. Then, like a hawk snatching its prey, it grabbed hold of me and dragged me across the sky. When I looked, I could not see myself. Here we are once more in Samadhi. By the magic of the moon's light, my body dissolved into pure spirit. In this form, I journeyed on, merging with a boundless light. Then the secret of this eternal play opened up before me. The 9 spheres of heaven were enveloped in light. The ship of my soul was lost in a shoreless sea. Suddenly, the sea of being formed into waves. Thoughts rose up, images and form broke on the shore. Then everything returned to the way it was before merging into that vast spirit. This is emergence from Samadhi. And yet, when everything returned to the way it was before, it was not quite exactly the same, because something profound had changed. Continuing, the fortune of this sight comes from Shams, the truth of Tabriz. Without his grace, no one could ever ride the moon and become the endless sea. Like a flower's sweet nectar, you are born laughing. The planets say you will be the happiest person in the world. You're graceful like the stem of a flower and free like the towering cypress. But there's something very strange about this cypress. It's flying. Once more. At dawn, the moon appeared in the sky, moon with a capital M. It floated down and looked at me. Then, like a hawk snatching its prey, it grabbed hold of me and dragged me across the sky. When I looked, I could not see myself. By the magic of the moon's light, my body dissolved into pure spirit. In this form, I journeyed on, merging with boundless light. Then the secret of this eternal play opened up before me, and emptiness became form. The 9 spheres of heaven were enveloped in light. The ship of my soul was lost in a shoreless sea. And suddenly the sea of being, capital B, formed into waves. Thoughts rose up. Images and forms broke on the shore. Then everything returned to the way it was before, merging into that vast spirit. The fortune of this sight comes from Shams, the truth of Tabriz. Shams, of course, was the teacher, if you want to call it that, of Rumi. Without his grace, no one could ever ride the moon and become the endless sea. Like a flower's sweet nectar, you were born laughing. The planets say you will be the happiest person in the world. You're graceful like the stem of a flower and free like the towering cypress. But there is something strange about this cypress tree. It's flying. Once again, a metaphor of deep practice of falling into samadhi and emerging back into the land of being with a small b. But when we emerge from samadhi, we are different. We are different, and yet at the same time, the habit patterns of history, cultural conditioning, personal conditioning, experience, and so on and so forth, come rolling back in. And because of what we have experienced, which is beyond comprehension and beyond words, they are not as powerful as they were before. And it becomes possible to work much more readily at releasing them and no longer being bound by these habit patterns of greed, anger, and delusion. This is what our practice offers. Nothing short of this true liberation. But it doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen, let's say, I was going to say easily, but that's not the right word. When people who have no experience with Zazen decide to do Zen practice, they think, oh, wow, this is going to be a piece of beautiful sitting, wonderful meditation. I'll just float along at ease, filled with peace. Well, not really necessarily. Ultimately, one does experience profound peace, even in the midst of challenge. But that's after we have a sense, we get a sense of what practice is and have had some level of experience of samadhi, some level of kensho, seeing into the nature of reality. It's built in, you can do it, but there's a price, and the price is opening your eyes wide to the conditioning that you're subject to, and working with everywhere you are caught to allow it to release. And there are wonderful, effective ways to do this. But this is why persistence and faith are so vital. And also that third pillar, it's called doubt, but I'm not sure I like that word because it can be misleading. It's more like a sense of possibility, a sense that perhaps how we live our life, what we see in our life, what we experience in our life It's not the whole story, and that there's a deeper, freer level of being that we can open to, and we can. There's no question about that. Countless human beings, just like you, just like me, have done this work over millennia. The Buddha himself uncovered it and taught it until he died. And during that period of time, he passed it on to many other masters who carried it down to the present day, more than 2,500 years later. And it's effective, and it wouldn't be effective if it hadn't carried down this far. Everyone can do it with faith, persistence, and a sense of openness to possibility that what we see, what we hear, what we feel is not necessarily the deepest truth, or even the truth at all for that matter. Remember what was quoted by Kalu Rinpoche. All phenomena are projections of the mind. All phenomena, everything that exists, are projections of the mind. And yet this mind is empty in essence. Through the deepest examination of the mind, may we find its innermost root and become free. It is so filled with promise that can be realized. So on the second day of Sesshin, after having many of us been already through a Sesshin just a week ago, go deeper, go much deeper. Throw caution to the winds, dive. You can't go wrong. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.